I guess so.
Well, we separate the two bodily functions.
Okay.
Urinating in space is actually very easy. There's a fan separator, we call it, and a hose. So you can imagine how it's done. But water doesn't flow naturally downhill in space, so you have to move it along somehow, and we move it along with this fan separator.
Okay.
So essentially, you urinate into a hose, and it's gently pulled down this hose and into a storage tank.
Okay, that sounds.
And we store it in the
logical.
tank, and when the tank fills up, we dump it into space.
Okay.
And the tank,
or put it into this centrifuge.
well, in the space shuttle, we dump it into space.
Oh, I see.
In the space station,
Yeah.
Prior to the water recycler, we actually stored it all on board in special Russian-made containers. And there's Russian cargo ships that are unmanned vehicles that visit the station periodically. And we would take the goods out of there and put all the trash in, which would include all the urine, and we'd send it back and it would burn up in the atmosphere.
Okay.
Space shuttle's a little bit different. We would actually dump it overboard because we didn't have the room to store it. Mm-hmm. So that's number one, if you will. And for number two, we do store all that on board. We have a special space toilet. It's a space toilet that has no water in it. Mm-hmm. It uses a vacuum to freeze dry all of the solid material. And when you freeze dry it, it's odor-free, and it stores nicely.
Okay.
So
That's that.
That's that.
Yeah, I know I'll be criticized for spending so much time on this topic, but I think I've helped people's curiosity.
It's the most common subject,
Yeah.
and usually what we get in schools is the middle school kids don't want to ask. The first graders are fearless.
Oh,
They'll
of
ask
course,
it, tell me, Mr. Astronaut, how do you go to a bathroom in space? And usually afterward, the teachers thank us for answering the question honestly, because they all wonder, but they just didn't want to ask.
Okay. Well, tell us about the crew. I know that some members, Heidi Piper in particular, is someone who you traveled with before. The selection of the crew, the way the crew gets along, the interactions and so forth, how does that work? I assume you have good feelings for each other. Have there been cases where crews have not gotten along, because it is such, I would imagine, a potential site for tension and difficulty? Well,
let me just start by saying that we had a great crew. Mm-hmm. Both times. I enjoyed every one of my crewmates. They each have, as do I, strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And what you learn by working with them for the year and a half prior to a mission is what are their strengths and weaknesses, and how do we get someone else to fill in where their weaknesses lie, and how do we get them to fill in where other weaknesses lie, so we kind of distribute the talent. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the parts that a commander gets to do.
So you choose your crew?
Well, we don't choose our crew per se, but we get to choose what our crew does. So we're dealt crew members, and that's
I see you assign the tasks then.
But the commander gets to distribute the tasks.
I see.
Now some of them fall out naturally, like who's going to do the spacewalks. But there's a lot of other small, I don't want to call them menial jobs, but they're just jobs that you need to do to conduct life in space. And we farm those out, so nobody has to work too hard at the lousy jobs. Like the pilot was always the one who had to take care of the bathroom. So because the pilot had to take care of the bathroom, we gave him less of the other lousy jobs. But we spread that all around. And for example, operating the robotic arms, there's one on the space shuttle and the space station. We try to deal them all out equitably, so that the talents are being used where they're appropriate, and we don't overload anybody.
So would you say that a major function of yours as commander is this management function, in terms of personalities and tasks, as well as I guess, overseeing the technical aspect?
I would, and I didn't, I think, completely realize that until I was laying on my back on the launch pad. And I remember thinking to myself, as they were working through an issue, they had a last-minute issue, like most flights do, leading up as the count progressed, and thinking to myself, I really hope we launch tonight, because if we launch tonight, then I know that most of my job is over. Because, as the commander, you have the responsibility of making sure the crew is trained, making sure everyone's prepared to go execute the job that they're designated to execute. And when you launch, well, it's all over. There's no more training. It's all time to do. I kind of liken it to Christmas Eve, you know, where you get to finally, you've shopped for the presents, you've made the meals, and now it's time to open the presents and do everything.
Well, that's wonderful for you, because you do all the hard work, in a sense, before.
Well,
and then you can enjoy it.
If somebody had told me up front that this is the way this is going to work, it would have saved me a lot of heartache. But I think it took me a while to realize that along the way that all the commander's work really takes place before the mission.
Well, you know, now let's backtrack a little bit and talk about your background. And I guess specifically, people are always curious about what made you become an astronaut. Were you somebody who, as a child, you know, I guess that's one of the 3 most popular jobs that a first grader would want, you know, fireman, policeman, astronaut. Were you one of those sorts of kids, or did it come to you later?
Well, the way I tell the story is that, you know, I watched when the first moon mission went. And I remember my parents woke me up early in the morning before the lunar module landed on the surface, and they said, you know, come on, Chris, you need to come and watch this, because this is going to be a huge deal. And I did, and then, you know, as the day progressed, then Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin came out, and they walked around the surface, and the whole world was just aghast. And they were like, gosh, I can't believe we're doing this. And, you know, I don't want to say I was hooked from that time forward, but I remember, you know, thinking, this is just amazing. I mean, I learned every part of the rocket. I knew what the command module was. I knew what the lunar module was. I knew how many stages were in it. You know, I knew how many engines were in each stage. And I just kind of became this little space kid, I guess. And now
you did detour into the naval. Was that part of the process? You were a naval pilot, and you trained pilots. Is that so? Let
me back up just a minute to the. You know, I think a lot of kids, like you said, there's 3 favorite jobs that young kids have, and I'm not sure if there's 3, but I think astronaut is usually listed as one of the things you wanted to be. But, you know, you have that dream early on, and then, you know, you grow up and people, you know, ask you what you want to be, and you want to say an astronaut, and then you realize, well, I shouldn't tell anybody this, because, you know, they're going to think I'm crazy. So you kind of go on to, I think, more realistic aspirations, and that's kind of, I think, where the Navy comes in. And because some of the old astronauts were Navy pilots, is that why I wanted to become a Navy pilot? I'm not really sure. I was always interested in flying. I thought the Navy stuff was really cool, and, you know.
Yeah. Well, the future of the space program, I know that President Bush in 2004 said that Mars was a goal. Is it still? What would be involved in that? When do you see that happening, if you do? Is that something you think you would be involved in?
It's a goal, and that's what President Bush did lay forth in 2004, like you had said. He kind of set this new vision for space exploration. You know, we knew the space shuttle was getting older, and we were going to have to replace it, and we knew that we needed to finish the space station. So he set forth these 3 tenets, you know, retire the space shuttle in 2010, finish the space station before you retire the space shuttle, and then develop a new vehicle that will take us back and forth to the International Space Station, and then will take us to Moon, Mars, and beyond is the exact wording. So it was left general enough for us to interpret, you know, what came first, what came second, what we needed to do. So we're headed in that direction. We will retire the space shuttle next year in 2010, barring anything unforeseen. And we will complete the space station before that's complete. We would like to think that we'll continue on the path that we're currently headed back towards flying this new Constellation program, which the first part of which is the Ares 1 rocket, which we'll have a test flight of later this year. So stay tuned. You'll see at least a little taste of it coming up. And then resuming human spaceflight on this Ares 1/Orion vehicle to the International Space Station will start in about 2015, 2016, depending on how we do.
Okay, so 2010 will be the retirement of the space shuttle. So how many, will there be more missions before, I assume there'll be more missions before 2010?
There are 9 more missions scheduled before the shuttle's retirement.
To finish the space
station. Well, one of those missions is to service the Hubble Space Telescope. So we're going to go back to the Hubble one more time, because the Hubble has really been a window to the universe for a lot of us. I mean, we've learned more about the outer reaches of the known universe through Hubble than any other single means. So we're going to go back and we're going to service that and make sure it lasts a few more years. But the other 8 missions are all devoted to completing the International Space Station.
And then a new rocket is being designed that will be able to go further. Is that the rationale?
The short-term goal is to pick up where we left off with transporting humans back and forth to the International Space Station. By 2020, our goal is to go back to the moon using a combination of this human rocket and the what we're calling the Ares 5 rocket, which is a huge Apollo-sized, about 360 feet tall. It's actually going to use the Space Shuttle's large external tank as its first stage. It will lift the lunar transfer stage into low Earth orbit, which the crew module will dock with this lunar transfer stage, and they'll both press on to the moon. And we're going to land this large, what we're calling the Altair lander on the moon on or about 2020.
And then from the moon to Mars?
Well,
is that the idea?
That's the idea. That's the
way station?
The loose, plan that we have right now. There's some debate over whether we should really go back to the moon at all. You know, some have that been there, done that philosophy. Don't need to do it again. Everyone's got an opinion. I have mine.
What is your opinion?
I think it's good to go to the moon again. I really do. I think that when we go to Mars, it's going to be a long mission, and we're going to try a lot of technologies out. They're going to have to work the very first time that we try them. Water recycling is just a small example.
Yeah.
Some of these baseline missions for the moon, one of them is 3 years long, 3 years back and forth. And they've changed a lot throughout the years, but you can't go 3 years without taking care of things like food. We can't bring enough food. So as they design these missions, I see the complexity of them growing, and there's certainly things that you would rather check out in your backyard before you go and drag your whole production out to Mars. So that's why I think it's a good idea.
Do you have another mission planned before 2010? And then beyond that, how long do you think your career will last?
Right now, I don't have. There's only 3 flights left to assign before the shuttle program is over. We have 6 crews in training right now, and the algebra adds up. There's 3 crews remaining to assign. It's probably I'm unlikely to get one of the last 3 flights just because I got back again. So, or because I recently got back.
Yeah.
As to whether I'll be involved with the Constellation program or not, I really don't know. I don't anticipate it at this point, but things could change.
We'll keep a lookout for you.
We could accelerate the program and keep a lookout. I'm not sure what you'll see.
I want to thank you very much. We're out of time. I have a lot more I could ask you, and I think our audience would like to know, but I want to thank you so much for coming back to Drexel,
my pleasure.
for being here, for answering even the most inappropriate questions as gracefully as you did. And I want to thank you for joining us today at the Drexel interview.